Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, where we explore living mindfully on the path to financial independence and beyond. On today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Spencer Sherman, a financial advisor and mindfulness teacher in the San Francisco Bay Area. Spencer is the founder and owner of Abacus Wealth Partners, a wealth management company that helps their clients align their financial resources with their deepest values and aspirations. In this episode, you'll hear an incredible story of how Spencer ran back into a burning building when a fire broke out in his office building early in his career, and how that fire changed his life and how he thought about everything. And you'll also learn how our beliefs about money impact how we live our lives, and that we can start to change our behavior by simply bringing awareness to these beliefs. And you'll hear Spencer's thoughts about how most people equate their self-worth with their net worth, and why that's so dangerous. You'll learn some simple practices to start bringing more awareness and choice to your relationship with money. And you'll learn what Spencer calls the dirtiest word in the English language, the word enough, and how if we can practice feeling that we have enough and that we are enough, we can realize that we can and already do have everything we really need. And we go into so much more. I really enjoyed recording this episode with Spencer, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, Spencer. How are you?
I'm great, Adam. How are you today?
Doing very well, thank you. I'm excited to have you on the show today. Well, I'd love to start by hearing a little bit about your backstory, because I think you have a pretty interesting path that includes both financial independence, financial advisory, and also mindfulness. So I'd love to hear about your path.
Yeah, sort of how I got here.
Right.
Growing up, I wanted nothing to do with money. When I was a teenager, I told my father that I will have nothing to do with money. That was a vow I made to him and to myself. and then I was actually at a part of a yoga retreat center. I lived at this yoga retreat center for a few years, and it was the director of the place who actually encouraged me to go to business school, and that you could do more in the business world than in the world of psychology. That was the other career option for me, was becoming a therapist. And there was something about the field of financial advising that combined the psychology, the therapeutic aspects that I was very attracted to, and then the analytical aspects, and then this ability to affect maybe many more people than just in a one-on-one relationship. And I think I didn't know this consciously at the time. I mean, I know it now, but I think the other big driving force, Adam, is all the suffering around money in my family. And that somehow I must have subconsciously sensed this need to heal that. So, I went through business school, I became a financial advisor, and then there was this major fire it was one of the largest fires in Philadelphia's history. And I was working in this big office building on Independence Square. The fire started on the 9th floor. I was on the 2nd floor. It took the Philadelphia Fire Department 3 days to put out the fire. And during that time, I started realizing that all my stuff was in that building, and that my whole life was in that building. My whole self-worth, net worth was inside. And somebody else also felt similarly. And the two of us convinced the fire marshal to let us into the building right after they had put out the fire, which is not at all safe, I later learned. And I'm walking through these dark hallways accompanied by these two firefighters, and water's like knee deep through this murky water, and arrive at my office and grab my computer and a bunch of files and all of my stuff that I thought was so important. And only to get it home and to see that it was all worthless. The paper files were illegible. They all had water damage. The computer was beyond repair. And it was this wake-up call to this sense of how much I valued my stuff over my life. And that was a theme in my family, and one that that fire was a big turning point for me, like this wake up of, because on the news they talked about the risk of electrocution in a after fire. There's the smoke inhalation. There's all kinds of issues why you wouldn't want to be going into a building after a fire. Not the least of which that none of my stuff had any value anymore. But I saw my attachment, my greed around the stuff, and it was painful, and it was a huge day of awakening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I read that on your bio, but to hear it kind of told, yeah, right after the fire's put out, you rush into the building, which could have collapsed, could have electrocuted you, all
Exactly.
to get
Yeah.
some
The World
stuff.
Trade
Yeah.
Center. I mean, anything could have happened, and it was just the most crazy thing. And it's hard to believe that the fire marshal let us in, but somehow, we negotiated for it to go in there, and we said, you've got 5 minutes to get your stuff and get out. It was totally insane, and I woke up to that and saw that that how I misplaced my value, and how and it turns out to be a common theme. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in this, that a lot of us equate our self-worth with our net worth. And it sounds silly because most of us would say, including me at the time, there's no way that my self-worth equals my net worth, but we don't act that way. We behave as if they're comparable. And we look at the rise and fall of the stock market. We look at our financial statements. We look at how much money we're earning. All of those are pointers to just numbers. They have nothing to do with our self-worth, but we look towards them to get our value. And certainly the culture very strongly supports that. So one of my missions has been to disentangle that equation, that they don't have anything to do with each other. I think my self-worth, along with yours, along with everybody else's, is priceless. I mean, our health, our creativity, our sense of humor, our ability to connect with one another, all those things. And I think it's very relevant today with this pandemic. They are way beyond the value of our finances, even though, yes, a certain amount of money is necessary for our survival. Beyond a certain level, sufficient level, the money has less and less marginal benefit. But we are beings, have like infinite and exponentially growing, expanding benefit the more we're able to connect. And that's one of the dangers, actually, of having money or being on a mission to just get money, is it can distract us from the truth of our own wealth. That's right here.
Yeah. I was kind of really kind of struck by what you said about that you were valuing your stuff and your net worth and your money, the kind of material possessions over your life, and that was kind of a theme in your kind of money backstory.
Absolutely. So
Would
much.
you mind talking a little more about kind of how that shows up in your life, and how you see it show up? Because you said it's very common.
My father put a lot of emphasis on how much money he made, and he was very proud of that. But there was an overemphasis. I mean, there's certainly something wonderful about earning money and being able to pay your bills and all that, but it was so overemphasized, and it is so overemphasized in our culture. And one of the things that he asked me every day was like, what did you accomplish today? It was all about productivity. And it was really about what kind of grades did you get? On that level, it was all on that external level. kind of undervaluing the internal gifts that we all have, or the ability for us to just experience joy, that has a value as well. And what I see is, so you asked about how do I see it show up for people,
Right.
which is I've worked with thousands of clients over the last 30 years. I founded a financial services company soon after getting my MBA from Wharton Business School. And what I've seen is people just overindulge in working endless hours, or being focused on a certain number. Like once I get to 5 million or then things will be different. In fact, I had a situation like that. It was another sort of best day, worst day of my life. And I think a lot of us have had those sort of, the same day can be the best day and the worst day of our lives. And this one happened. I was a financial advisor for about 5 years in my early 20s. And this client came in and he said to me, if you can double our money, we'll be able to retire. We'll be able to do whatever we want. And this was back on the East Coast. And, he was sort of saying, if we put it in sort of California, more Buddhist kinds of terms, he was essentially saying, well, if you can double my money, I'll be free. It's like basically said, I'll have no worries. I'll be able to do whatever I want. I won't have to continue being a physician. It was like that. And he had a couple of million at the time. And I took this on. I was so excited because I thought, wow, I know that, just with the market's help, he's going to double his money over time. It's going to happen. And I'm going to produce such freedom for somebody. That was so compelling to me. And about 5 years later, this was a very strong market period. His money did double. And he was coming in for a meeting. And I'm now in my later 20s. And I am just super thrilled to share the news that I say, your money has doubled. You are now free. I've gotten you to the level that you told me you would need to have freedom. And he, instead of being happy, he had this look of dread on his face. And I knew something was up. And then he looked down and he said very softly, he said, you know what? I've been thinking about this, and I actually think I need another doubling of my money. I actually need twice as much to get there. And it was just this complete deflation in my body, that he looked more stressed then than he did when he had half as much money, which is another actually pointer to today, that I always say that it's good to keep in mind that if you have less money today, and I know that so many of us are really struggling, and for those who are really struggling, yes, get the help you need. But for others that might have just lost some money, look back to 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you had less than you even have now. And perhaps you were happy then, or even less stressed about money back then when you had less. Well, he, like I said, looked more stressed. And I left that meeting saying, this is the worst profession on the planet. I am done being a financial advisor. Because even if you do your job and make somebody money, nothing happens. In fact, he seemed to go backwards with the extra money, which is possible. You can actually have less freedom, more stress, more sort of gripping onto money, less inner security as your money grows. It's possible. And then I had the realization that no, that was not just the worst day of my life, Adam. It was also the best day, because it told me that there's another path I have to take with money, that I have to sort of work with people's beliefs around money. and their conditioning around money and how they were raised, and just this sense that there's so much value in the money. I have to sort of undo this conditioning if I'm going to help people, and I can really help people, because this is, it's not going to happen from just doubling their money. It's going to happen. It's not, it probably won't happen at all from that. It's really going to happen from some inner work.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. It sounds like that his reaction really woke you up to the fact that it's not about the money. It's about
Yeah,
how we think about and feel about the money and the story we tell ourselves about the money, that if that's not
absolutely.
addressed, no amount of money will actually change that.
Absolutely, because it's also, it's because I feel it's possible, Adam. Money I hold is really this incredibly powerful tool, and it can be used for whatever, however we want to direct it. It can be used for good. It can be used for increasing one's greed and suffering in life. So it's possible that one could double their money and feel more free, or feel this sense of like able to be more generous with their money, and that could lead to more freedom. It's probably not, as I'm thinking about it, it's not just the doubling of the money. It's what does that do for the person, and if it leads to doing positive things in the world and generous acts in the world, I think that can really help someone evolve in a spiritual, emotional way. It can be a very positive experience to have one's money grow, if that's if good actions come from that money.
I read something that you wrote about what your mission is at Abacus, your firm, and you said that you seek to help people align their financial resources with their deepest values and aspirations. And I think that's what we're really talking about here. Just having more money in your bank account doesn't really help you if you're not aligning it with your purpose, with your
That's right.
values, with your
That's right.
aspirations.
That's right.
And there's some real, I think, inner work that needs to happen to figure out what those things are first and foremost, but
Yeah.
then to kind of check in, am I actually aligning things, my money, my finances, my time, with those values? So,
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, you said that so well, that having a goal, which is can be so common for a lot of people, like I want to have $1 million or $5 million or 10 million, whatever the new number is today.
right.
That it sort of has this magical sound to it, and we ascribe so much to these numbers, when in fact I've seen so many people arrive at these numbers, just like this client I shared, and nothing happens. There is not going to be any arrival when your money gets to be 1 million or 5 million or 10 million. So if you can really, accept that just wishing for a certain number is not going to bring you the happiness you expect, then there's the possibility of, well, how can I have everything I want right now? How can I have it all right now? And that's been a lot of the direction of the firm I created, is focusing not just on the future, but on making your life work with what you have. With having, if your dream is to travel all the time and you don't have any money, well, maybe you should be working on chips or something like that. It's like, how do you embrace who you are today without having to necessarily wait 20 years for some pot of money growing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. I'm very interested in the financial independence, retire early community.
Yeah.
Um, and while I think it's a really great idea and mission, or kind of goal, to reach financial independence early in life so that you can design your life and spend your time on the things that are meaningful and purposeful and align with your values. I think it's a whole another thing to actually figure out what those things are and to realize that we could be living that way now.
Yeah.
I feel myself, as I've kind of deepened my practice, my mindfulness and meditation practice, I've started to realize that I'm always living for some future, right? If only I had X dollars, if
Yeah.
only I had a house instead of this apartment during the pandemic. It's always some future time where everything's just going to work itself out. And many people in the financial independence community, myself included, pick a number
Yeah.
that's 25 times their annual expenses, is kind of the 4% rule
Right.
I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
But then what? And so I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on kind of this, like, if then, then I'll
Well,
be happy.
yeah, I think you said it. It's funny, but when you were talking about, yeah, like when I have this amount of money, then
Mhm.
life begins. I mean, that's a common refrain, right? I've even have had that refrain during a meditation sitting. I say, as soon as this meditation is over, then,
Right.
then I can really start my day.
Hmm.
Then I can do the project that's really gonna, that's, really the main part of my day or something. That's
Mm.
there's just this tremendous conditioning in our culture towards away from now, towards and mostly towards the future. I mean, also, certainly there's a lot of focus on the past too, but it's anything from, it's sort of like somebody once said to me, the most common line in movies is a form of "get me out of here." Like, here is not okay. The better here is in the future. And
Right.
that's what you need to be, focusing. But the more you condition yourself to think that life is going to arrive when the $1 million happens, or when the bell rings in the meditation session, that's when you can actually exhale. The more you've trained that mind to be future conditioning, so when it arrives there, when the bell rings, or when your financial guy calls you and say you've got $1 million, the mind has now been trained to anticipate the next future thing.
Hmm.
It doesn't just rest in the present because the bell rings or because the money arrived. And I feel like that's what we need to start doing. How
Yeah.
do we enjoy our lives and our finances today and start to bring the beautiful practices of mindfulness to our money life, and to start noticing, and what brings us joy with our money, what brings us dissatisfaction or suffering with our money, how do we have conversations around money with others that bring us fulfillment, or which ones are we avoiding? So I think that's one of the things I'm trying to get myself and others to start doing is to, as you're saying, Adam, is to start living in this present moment around our finances, and find a way to feel fulfilled and to enjoy what we have today, which I know sounds really radical, but it's a prescription for happiness. It's a setup for being okay with the way things are, which is, incredible state of being. I mean, that's like the state of equanimity, right? Is to be at ease with the way things are, is a very lofty place to be.
So I totally agree. How do we do that? How do we
Mhm.
practice that?
Okay. Fair question. So,
It's a big question, right?
yes, it's a good question. And there's a number of things. I mean, I've sort of hinted at some of these things. I think the less frequently we pay attention to our numbers, the less we pursue. So, checking the stock market less frequently, or checking your financial statements less frequently, not pursuing the thoughts about, oh, if only I won that lottery, if only I had $1 million, if only I had that house, if only I had his job, or that situation, my life would be better. Those thoughts popcorn up all the time, but our work is to not pursue them, to have those be very brief encounters with those thoughts, and not turn them into long conversations. Sort of like very just, oh, there's that thought of, wow, maybe I should, my life would be better if I won the lottery or if I had, $1 million or something, and then letting it go. And then there's a number of other things that one can do. So one is really feeling into, and if it's okay with you, Adam, I'm going to say a dirty word on the podcast. And it's okay?
Of course.
The dirty word that I don't think you're allowed to say in this culture for sure is the word enough. I think that's the most profane word there is, more profane than any word my 16-year-old daughter would use. It's like what I would suggest is start using that word. Start trying this practice on that what you have and who you are is enough as you are in this moment. To start saying that. And if you can't do it with money at first, do it with time, because we all say that we're over busy, we don't have enough time. What if you just started saying to people, I have enough time. I have plenty of time. I'm not overwhelmed with busyness, and just started to shift your perspective on time from scarcity to enough. And the same with money. So that's another practice one can take on. And then another practice is a practice of generosity. So generosity is an antidote to scarcity. And I think and it doesn't have to be generosity with money. It could be generosity with time or skills, but giving of yourself to others is a wonderful way. And especially, when we give a little bit of money, and the amount isn't important, but when you give $1 to somebody, you're telling your brain in some ways that you have enough. That's like getting back to what I just said. That's a very important thing, to kind of get to that place of where you have enough, where yes, you're open to more, and that might be what happens. But if your current money situation doesn't change, can you find a way to find peace with that? And generosity quells some of that clinging towards, if only I had more. Because you're actually doing the opposite. You're giving stuff away to others, whether it's time or money or resources. And then there's, I'll share another practice, Adam, if that's okay. That
yes, please.
This is from the Brahma Viharas, which are these 4 sort of highest emotions that the Buddha spoke about, the four Brahma Viharas. And one of them is loving kindness. And the third one is, the Pali term is mudita. And in English, that means sympathetic joy. And it's about wishing for enjoying the success of others, being happy for others' joy. Also somewhat un-American thing, right? Because we're supposed to be competitive with each other. And if you win, Adam, that means that I lose. So I have to hope that you fail or something like that. I mean, we have all that crazy stuff from the culture. But this idea is that in your meditations, you actually wish the person who you're envious of, say financially, the person who has the 5 million, you actually wish that their life becomes more successful, more expansive. You wish for their happiness. And I have done this with all kinds of different people in my life. I've done it around money. I've done it around people who seem to have more friends than me, or better connections, or more happiness, or a better house, or whatever. It just dissolves the envy. It dissolves it to a point where I start feeling good about what I have. So it's a very powerful practice that probably seems crazy, the idea of wishing well to somebody who has more than you, but try it on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it kind of a variation of like a love and kindness practice where you
yes.
kind of, what are the phrases that you would kind of wished for them?
May your success increase.
May your success increase.
Yes. May your success increase, and may it continue forever. May your happiness increase and continue forever. May your health increase and continue forever. So it's similar to a loving kindness. Some of the loving kindness phrases of may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be well. But it has this extra tone of really wishing further success for this person that already has success. Or really in being really delighting. You're not just sending good energy to them, you're actually really feeling the joy at their happiness, which might take a while to cultivate. Because at first, when I started doing this, Adam, it was like, no, I don't really wish for this person's happiness, success, but I'll just start it. I'll just do it anyway, just to see what happens. And in that, something shifted. And and this was a person who I just could not, in some ways, I couldn't stand their personality. I couldn't stand how much success they had in the world. And it started happening. And it, first of all, it healed the relationship with this person, I think, in many ways. I mean, the relationship got a lot better. I mean, who knows if it was directly caused by that. But the other thing that happened is that I no longer felt this financial separation between me and him. And it enabled me to feel more relaxed about my own finances, my own financial life. So on all those levels, it was a big surprise how well it worked. And one of the things that I'm very much on a mission about is helping people wake up to the stories, the beliefs they have around money that we hold as sacrosanct, that these beliefs are absolutely, indisputably true. And in fact, they're just messages that may be true, may not be true, but we grip them so tightly. And an example of this is many people grow up with beliefs around that you shouldn't charge more than a certain amount. I mean, I see this a lot with women where they undercharge for their services because of some beliefs that they're carrying from the past, or all these beliefs that we've been talking about how future oriented we are. So to start examining some of the beliefs that you grew up with around money, to start to uncover some of the money stories, is a very powerful way of breaking down some of this conditioning. And for me, one of the strong messages around money for me was don't talk about money. And that's a very loaded message, because if you can't talk about it, and certainly in this culture, it's like a lot of people think it's the most taboo thing, more taboo than sex. But that also can create a lot of shame if you're not allowed to talk about it. It can also, have you make less money if you're not comfortable speaking about it. It can also lead to a whole breakup of a family, like it did in my family. I lost my aunt, my uncle, and my first cousins because my father and his brother-in-law were not able to have a money conversation. I mean, it was so taboo that they just decided to part ways. And my father lost his sister. And I lost my first cousins, my aunt and uncle. These people lived across the street from us growing up. But at age 10, they moved away, completely lost connection, to the point where actually, about 25 years later, I hired a private detective to actually find them. And I reconnected to my first cousins. But, I missed out on many, many decades of knowing them because of an issue around money.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful if you can start to become aware of these things.
Right? Because if we can actually truly become aware of our tendencies and have that recognition, that in itself can lead to our transforming our behavior around that issue. If we can deeply see it and know it in ourselves. And this is where mindfulness comes in, because as we develop that ability to witness our lives and see things much more clearly, with that clear knowing, then we start to say, wait a second, when I pursue that thought or that behavior around money, it creates discomfort or suffering for me or for others, so I'm going to pull back. I'm not going to do that again. And we can actually change behavior just from recognizing the behavior.
Right. Bringing it into awareness.
Yeah. Sometimes, that's often the first step, but it could also be all the steps.
Right. Yeah. I certainly find for myself that I need to realize things multiple times.
Yeah.
Perhaps with years in between, right?
Yes. Yeah.
These things are so below the surface, so kind of encoded in the way that we see the world that it's really easy to forget and just go back to like, oh yeah, that's just normal. That's what the world is. But really it's just a belief that I have about the world. Curious about, are there any practices that you recommend or that you do to bring those to light or to help people bring those to light? Either kind of meditation practices, awareness practices, or like journaling practices or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I've been leading workshops at many places, including Spirit Rock Meditation Center, and I am working now to actually bring my course, which was called the Dharma of Money, Creating Your Money Karma. I've been working to bring that online, and in that course, I do actually journaling, and I also do some guided meditation around uncovering these childhood beliefs that we inherited. And that's what I would suggest is start to tune in and asking yourself, where did this tendency around money come from? How old was I when I first learned that money is evil, or money shouldn't be talked about, or you should marry rich or not marry rich, or whatever the beliefs are, or you should have a lot of money, or that, money is the only source of security. I mean, one of the things my father said to me is money is the only thing that will give you security, and you can never have enough of it. It's a complete catch-22, right? Because if you can never have enough of it, you're never going to get security.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there like a prompt for those journaling, like to identify the money exercises?
Yeah, I would say some good prompts are, what did you learn from your father? What did you learn from your mother? What did you learn maybe from aunts or uncles? Or what did you learn at school around money and the way you spend it, and the way you should save it or not save it? In the way you should give it away or not give it away, in the way you should invest it or not invest it, in the way you should share it with, help out friends or not help out friends. What are those messages you received, or about asking for a raise at work, or discussing money? I know people who they will go out to an expensive dinner that they can't afford because they can't say to their friends that I can't afford this restaurant. So, they're actually really hurting themselves with that belief that, we just can't talk about money. So as you start to uncover that belief and feel the pain beneath that belief and the suffering it's caused, one can start to release that. And maybe replace that belief with something that feels way more empowering, which is not necessarily just talk to everybody about money. I mean, I don't necessarily think the opposite is the right thing either. It's got to be appropriate. And I'm not suggesting that one should just tell everybody how much money you make, etc. But I think that we have gone so much to the extreme of being unable to talk about money that it actually gets us in trouble. So many times somebody will tell me about something they did in their life that they feel a lot of shame around, like they impulsively bought a car, a house, a timeshare, or something, that they impulsively did something with money, and they realized what they should have done is mentioned it to a friend. Like, do you think this makes sense to you, what I'm doing? Or talk to some neutral person. But there's no acceptance for that in our culture. Like, there's often this, no, I know I'm going to hear a no from my friend. I'm just going to do it anyway because I don't want to hear that. like there's not a culture of discussing things around money. It's so private, right? I don't want to.
I should know the answer. I should
know
just
the answer.
figure it out.
I can't call up my best friend and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Do you have any thoughts for me? I've got to just do it, because money is already, shrouded in shame. So we keep it that way. So what I'm suggesting is, yes, everybody, another great thing is to have a money ally. There just needs to be somebody who has common sense, who's probably not a good friend of yours, I would say, but somebody who you can trust to give you the truth, even if it's the truth you don't want to hear. And then you can be the money ally for them. So it can be a reversible kind of roles. And that can be so helpful, because when we're in the money situation, emotion takes over common sense. And if we've got that money ally, that person can be that sounding board for us. Say, whoa, wait a second. Does this really make sense for you to take on all this debt to invest in real estate in 2006 or 2007? And, when it was so easy to get debt, and I know some people went completely bankrupt because they just completely over-leveraged themselves. Now, had they spoken to even a non-financially sophisticated person, that person might have said, whoa, what's driving you to make these very speculative, risky investments?
Yeah. Just having someone you can go to talk about money in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah. I think, it's just to keep some of our strong tendencies in check. And it's happened to me as well. I feel like I've also done that. Like I could have benefited from checking in with someone before I did the impulsive purchase.
I would love to dive in a little bit more into this idea of enough. I saw the video you did, and that's the Sebastopol type TED Talk thing. And it was very interesting and is really the driving ideas of this podcast, because of the whole thing of like, if only I get to X million dollars, if only this, then I'll be happy. But this idea of enough, if I can feel enough right now, then I don't need to chase any of that. I don't need to be grasping. I don't need to be resisting, right? So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about how you think about enough in your life, and maybe how you help your clients discover what enough is for them.
Well, I think that includes this sense that each of us is enough as we are, that our beings are enough, that there's nobody like us. Like Oscar Wilde said, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Really feel into that. The message of that quote to me is that who you are is so distinct and so special that there's nothing you really actually sort of need to do other than give your gifts away. That you have it all within you, and there's nothing to strive for. There's nothing to reach for. You are enough just as you are. You were brought to this planet to give your gifts just as you are. It's not like in 20 years, it's right now. And with money, it's appreciating what you have. And we put so much focus on all of our wants, which are very future oriented, instead of on our haves. I'd say to start making that shift from wanting to having, like, look at all the stuff that you have in your life, the health you currently have, right? The friends you have, the sense of humor you have, the environment that you live in, the money that you currently have, the food you have, all the things that you currently have. And to start asking yourself, what do you love about what you currently have? That would be a shift for a lot of us. Even to go into our garage and notice the stuff maybe we've put in there because we had too much clutter in the house, and start to see the abundance that's in our lives today. And that includes those things that are not so material, like our friendships. That's a important thing to recognize, because those things have, a huge value. I think they're probably priceless, but we often don't count them in, even though they're incredibly valuable. Our friendships and connections to others in our lives and our health, all these things have real value. Yeah, I mean, I know I saw an exercise once that if you take something you have, put it in your garage or put it in a closet and put a note on your calendar to retrieve it in 3 months, you will so appreciate and value that item so much more. So we forget what we already have. We're so conditioned, focused on what we don't have, what we want, what we see that others have. We're very outward focused instead of inward focused. And there's so much here, right here, that we miss it. We miss the wealth that's here and the stuff that we already have around us. So I would say that would be a huge cultural shift for us to start to make, and then to start, in our meditation practice, to really live this as well. That there's no goal with the meditation practice. There's no place to get to. We're not trying to change anything or improve anything. We're just being with what is, or just acknowledging ourselves exactly as we are. And that from that, there often comes this like subtle joy starts to wake up in us when we're so intimate and accepting of our current life, our current inhale and exhale, our current stuff. We feel this joy, and there's just a calming down when we're no longer efforting outward, reaching for things, and just relaxing with the shoulders down and receiving all that we have in our lives. There's a incredible ease that can come from stepping into the sense of enough. And you watch that funny that little mini TED talk I did where I mentioned that John Rockefeller, the world's first billionaire, when asked, how much is enough? And he said, just a little bit more. That is so, we laugh at that. And I laugh like you do, Adam. But it really is, there's a truth to that. That
Absolutely.
If we were really honest with ourselves, or maybe with our wanting minds, we would see that that's what our minds want. We want a little bit more no matter what we have. It doesn't matter that we might have twice as much as we had 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We want more still. And if you can kind of get off that train, and come into the sense that what you have might be enough. And like I mentioned earlier, there's some of us that actually need more food or shelter or clothing. And by all means, do what you need to do to have enough so that you can reach that certain level. But there's been many studies done on this. Once you get beyond that modest level of living, the gains are so small, the gains in happiness, and start to diminish over time. So by coming into this place of enough, you actually let go of all this anxiety. Like, will I ever get to 1 million or 5 million or 10 million or whatever the number is? Or that my life is going to be better once I own this second home or move or something. And you start resting. It doesn't mean you shouldn't still get the second home, but you're getting it with a sense of ease with what you already have. And then you're going to be able to enjoy that second home, because you're not going to be wanting, well, I got the second home, but now it needs to be renovated. Then it will be okay. Then I'll have my life. You're saying, no, I'm not going to keep playing that game of that next month or next year or when this happens, then I'll arrive. Then I'll be able to rest. You start resting right now.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense and seems totally radical and impossible at the same time.
Totally radical. Totally radical. it really is this sense of, because we're so trained like to keep improving our standard of living, to keep going for more. That's just built in us. Our parents sort of want that for us. Like, you should have a better, quote, better life than I had. I think what they really mean is a more joyful life or more free life. It comes out as, I want you to have more stuff than I had, especially for people whose maybe parents had to really struggle. They survived. They were at survival in coming over to this country. There can be that sense of like, I want my kids to have, a big house, to be able to afford college for their kids, etc. But really what they're saying is, I want you to be happy. I want you to have peace and ease in your life. And those things come from finding an okayness with who you are and what you have right now. Not even in an hour, but right in this moment.
Yeah. John Kabat-Zinn very often says that you are whole and complete right now in this moment. There's nothing to attain, nothing to do, just seeing that you are whole and complete right now. And
yes.
No matter how many times I hear it, it's like, yes, but there's just such that urge to get more, to do more, to improve, to grow, to learn. And I think it's really about finding that balance, right? Realizing you're enough, and also that you can invest in yourself and your talents and your knowledge and all of that. And I find it's a tricky balance. I feel very much on the on out of balance a lot of times. I'm laughing a lot because what you're describing, it just is like describing my life, my parents, my world. And you mentioned you look in your garage and you see all the things that you forgot you even had. I'm like, I wish I had a garage. It's just like, it's this story I've been telling myself, I'm sure my whole life, but becoming more and more aware of it now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Is that awareness is the key. And it's just like in our sitting practice, there's no time lost. There's no, it's just coming right into this moment and start practicing that this breath is enough. This body is enough, just as I am. And that's another thing that we're always all about, improving this body that of course is aging, but just accepting this body as it is, accepting the mind and the heart as they are, accepting our stuff as they are. And with that, the ironic thing, Adam, is that when we're in that place, I have found for myself, when I've been in that place of being relaxed and okay with myself as I am, I actually produce more. Yeah. I'm actually maybe even more likely to make money, because I'm in a more creative space. Totally. When I'm not striving and efforting. When one feels this sense of enough, one is not in a place of scarcity. And when there's scarcity, there's also a lot of fear. And fear, drives adrenaline. It drives that amygdala, that fight flight response. And when we're in that, we can't be as creative. So this whole enough principle really permeates many other facets of life, including our ability to be creative and see that, okay, I'm out of money. I need a job. I could be going into an overdrive fight flight mode. I probably am, let's say, in a fight. But if I can start to calm myself down and maybe say, wait, what is it that's enough right now? And I've got this breath going, and I've got this heartbeat going, and that's enough. And if I can calm myself down, all of a sudden I might have an insight, oh, I need to call all my friends and tell them my situation, that I lost a job and I'm looking for work. Because now I feel like I can do it, because I'm no longer in this paralyzed fear place. Like a friend of mine actually did a version of that. She told a dear friend that she was struggling financially. And it took a lot. I think it took her getting to this place of ease or equanimity to be able to share with a good friend that I'm out of money. And that good friend shared it with the larger community, mindfulness community, actually, in my town. And a bunch of us gave her money. And that it was both the amount of money she received, but I think it was also that her breaking through and her being able to share her truth led to a real ease in her life, led to a flourishing of her life. And she's actually working again now, but it really was very heartening to her that the way she was supported by the community that came from her ability to be with what is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it goes back to what you said about being grateful and appreciative for what we have.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she had was her mindfulness practice, her ability to calm herself, her friends, the community, right? All of those things are things that we would, if we're in that scarcity mode, we wouldn't even recognize as assets, right?
Yes.
And calming herself allowed her to see that clearly and changed everything.
Yeah. Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yes. And when she shared with her friend, she was not coming from a place of striving or needing it. And, so the same way you think about two people going for a job interview and one, they're the same financial situation, but one is exuding desperation and the other one is exuding confidence and calmness. Who's going to more likely to get the position? So this idea of enough, of really stepping into that and embracing it as much. This is not a binary thing where we're either going to be, feel like we're enough or not enough. It's really a movement towards embracing enoughness as to who we are and what we have, and what we do, like to make that more and more the messaging that we're listening to, rather than the outer messaging, which is all about you're not enough. You need to change the way you look. You need to change the house you live in. You need to, prove yourself. You need to have more money. You need to, everything about you needs to change. You're just not okay with yourself as you are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really, really powerful. Thank you so much for this discussion. I think it was super enlightening for me and really a good reminder of why this practice of enough and just bringing awareness to the striving that is very common with most of us. And I'll speak for myself, very present right now and most of the time. It was a really good reminder. So let's switch gears to the Mindful Fire Final Four. And the first question is, what is something that you are extremely grateful for right now? Something or someone that comes to mind that you're grateful for?
I am grateful for the interconnectedness that I feel with every person on this planet now more than ever, that we're all experiencing this pandemic on some level. I mean, we're experiencing it somewhat differently, of course, depending on where we live and our life situation, but we're all on the same side for a rare moment. Nobody likes this pandemic. Nobody wants to get the coronavirus. And that is, to me, is very unifying. We sort of have this common enemy. And to me, that can really unite us in a way like, okay, we have this common enemy. It's not each other. So what can we do to ameliorate the situation? What can we do to prevent future viruses or other things like this from happening? Let's join our hearts, our minds, our brains together and figure this out. That would be that that would be a pretty incredible thing to come out of this, if the world is a more collaborative, peaceful world instead of a more adversarial me versus you kind of world.
It could be a wake-up call like the fire was for you.
Yeah, I think
Hope so.
Really, going from it's all about me to it's all about me, or it's all about the U.S., the United States, to it's all about we. It's all about us.
Yeah, we're all in this together. I
We're
think it
all
really shows.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we keep saying it, right? But let's hope that we really take it to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's true. I mean,
yeah,
just
right.
how
It's
fast
like,
this thing spread, how much global travel we have, like this is not changing. So we really need to
all
wake up.
impact each other. We're seeing that.
Yeah. Cool. The second question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone on the path of mindfulness as an aspiring meditator?
Well, that I would say to be mindful of the word. I think it's a fine word, aspiring, and to be mindful of not turning into striving. To really relax. It's this right effort, I would say. I mean, it's like bringing in intention, a strong intention. I'd say, like at the beginning of your practice, to bring in a strong intention for your sitting that morning, and then to let go of any outcome, and to just be with yourself as you are, and to be that incredibly, be your own guru. I mean, to be that loving presence for yourself, whatever arises, to have that be okay, even if you're irritable during the whole sitting, to have that be okay. Or maybe there's going to be a time when you just get up and say, I'm going to do walking meditation, or I'm going to take a run, or something. But to be okay with whatever arises, I would say is been a key teaching for me, is to not again, it's that enough principle is to really open to what's present. And often when I do that, the meditation actually becomes so much more joyful, and I don't want to get up and go take a run. I just want to sit when I allow myself to be with the let's say I'm feeling irritated or bored. When I'm actually fully present with that, it can actually transform to joy.
Well, I can relate. The third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone on the path to financial independence?
Well, I'm thinking about, there's been so many people have written about this. And I know, Vicki Robbins has written a lot about financial independence, your money or your life. Mm-hmm. And that you can do this on way less money. I think you have to define, what does that mean? Because a lot of people just talk about it. Like, what would it mean? Write down the details of what financial independence looks like to you. What would you be doing that's different than what you're doing now? And then I'd ask the follow-up, how could you be doing those things now, and not wait till that financial independence? If I was watching your life when you were financially independent, how would I know you were financially independent? What would I observe in watching you? Like, what would be your daily actions? Would you be just playing golf all the time? Would you be meditating? Would you be still working in the same job? Would you just be, is your expectation that you just be free and happy all the time? Like, I would write all that down and get really clear. And then by all means, I think there's virtue in saving money and having a plan of when you're no longer dependent on money. But to recognize that the goal is to be with your present each moment now, that this is your life. There is no there. There may not be. You don't know the world is uncertain. Like, to live as fully as you as possibly can in this moment, embrace this moment, and to let go of any ideas. I mean, the idea that you're going to get to financial independence, stop working. For most people, it doesn't work that way. They get to financial independence and they still want to give their gifts to the world. And often a vehicle for doing that is through work. So, maybe it will lead you to find work that you love, that you don't have to wait for financial independence to do the work you love.
Yeah. I think it was in that same presentation you gave, you said, work like you don't need the money.
Yeah. 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 I think that's what we're all aiming for. I know a lot of people that are working, even though they've got lots of money, and they're not working in jobs making a lot of money. They're teachers, or counts therapists, and they have millions of dollars. They clearly don't need to be doing it, but it's what gives them their sense of purpose. It's what makes them come alive. So that's what's tricky about the old notions, or about some of the financial ads, because they show you somebody playing golf, or, and I don't know if there are that many people, or if you're that person who's going to feel really fulfilled just playing golf or shuffleboard 24/7. I think most people want to give our gift to the world still in some way, and maybe you'll give your gifts to the world through playing golf all the time, but most of us do it in other ways.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And the last one is, how can people find you online if they want to learn more about your work, connect with you for your financial planning firm, or any other way to get in touch?
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, so my personal website right now is mindfulspencer.com. And I also have another site that's in development called dharmaofmoney.com. And then my firm's website is abacuswealth.com. Abacus, like the Chinese adding machine, and abacuswealth.com. And we're also offering pro bono sessions during this virus time, so you can take advantage of those with us as well.
Wonderful. That's really great. And I also noticed on your website, Abacus Wealth, that you have some money meditations.
Yes.
That get into some of the enough and the kind of money story, things like that. So I'll also include that in the show notes for this show.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Spencer. Wow. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mindful Fire podcast.
Adam, it's been wonderful. I loved your questions, and this interview, benefit, many, and including each other. I mean, I'm still working on these things. It's not like I'm like this. I've completely mastered any of these things I'm talking about. So I'm an active student along with everybody else.
It's a great reminder. This is a work of a lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you got value from today's episode, please hit the subscribe button on the platform you're listening to this or watching this on. This just lets the providers know you're getting value from the episodes and you'd like to be here when we produce additional content. And if you'd like to be notified whenever we post a new episode, please join our mailing list at mindfulfire.org.